Hi all, this is the first of two lessons that will concentrate on social norms and their implications. Focus on information that you will find on pages 14 and 15 of the first study guide. Remember that norms are, in effect, standards of behavior. They're more or less rules of the game, if you will. Look over the implications of social norms down at the bottom of the 14th page of study guide number 1, but concentrate primarily at the top of page 15 with respect to some of the key functions that are performed by social norms. Remember that norms help us to survive by, in effect, making our lives more predictable. And secondly, this generalized predictability is going to save us a massive amount of time. You can imagine without norms how you might respond to someone simply walking into a room and waving at you. What am I supposed to do? Run, punch them out, etc. Finally, bear in mind that social norms help to ensure social order in that they organize and regulate everyday behavior. Many other social animals do this through interpersonal power or strength. We humans have replaced much of that with respect to social norms. Now, there are some important characteristics of social norms not included on your study guide that I would encourage you to remember. Don't forget that most are unwritten. They're passed along orally through and over the generations, such as we learn more often than not simply by observation that there are occasions where we're supposed to dress formally. You want to remember that norms are instrumental in that they serve specific purposes. For example, one should brush his or her teeth regularly and have regular dental exams to ensure good dental health. Some norms are explicit, that is to say, specific. Parents are supposed to support and protect their children. On the other hand, there are those norms that are more or less implied or implicit, such as we're expected to be respectful when interacting with our parents and our grandparents. But never lose sight of the fact that norms do over time change. For example, it's much more acceptable today to live together before marriage, cohabitate, than it was 50 years ago. Likewise, today it's much less acceptable to smoke than it was 40 to 50 years ago. You also want to bear in mind that most norms are conditional, since they often apply to specific situations. Passing gas, for example, in private is quite a bit different than, true or false, doing it publicly. The same is true when it comes to picking one's nose. Now, when it comes to norms, bear in mind too that some apply to everyone in society. For example, in the United States today, no one is permitted by law to have multiple spouses at the same time. In other words, bigamy is illegal. But some norms apply to some people and not to others. For example, in our society, there are very strong norms with respect to taking the lives of others. But those norms don't apply to soldiers in combat situations, or police officers in shootouts, or executioners performing capital punishment. Now, it's very important as well when you think about norms to recognize they don't always tell us things we can't do. Remember that norms are the shoulds in our lives. And I suspect all of you would agree, I certainly do, that I've been should all over on numerous occasions. But a lot of people assume norms only focus on things you can't do. They're always negatively oriented. Well, bear in mind you need to know clearly the difference between prescriptive norms and proscriptive norms. Prescriptive, again, are by and large affirmative, things you should do. Proscriptive are the should nots, the no-nos, if you will. And a way to highlight this is to take a look at the 10 Commandments. Can you pick out those that are proscriptive? We'll take a look at 6 and 7. On the other hand, look at 5. The 5th commandment is really a prescriptive one, something you should do, while 6 and 7 are proscriptive norms. Now, it's also important to remember that norms tend to be reinforced by what are called sanctions. Sanctions, think of them as rewards or punishments. So a positive sanction is a reward, a negative sanction is a punishment. Now these can be issued informally as well as formally. A formal negative, a sanction, is usually one that is given out formally. That is to say, it's public, often with a lot of fanfare and attention, and it's usually carried out by people in positions of power and authority. You can probably think of numerous illustrations. Receiving a failing grade for a college-level class, receiving a speeding ticket, or a jail sentence for a crime committed, being fired from your job for inadequate performance. Informal sanctions, on the other hand, are much more spontaneous. They're not formalized. They're rarely, if ever, given by those or issued by those in positions of power and authority, and they don't carry a lot of formality or fanfare. For example, any of you ever violate this folkway? You pick your nose in public, okay? Or some of you are certainly aware of the fact that some people become the primary focus of folkway violations when they are considered the worst dressed and they happen to be a celebrity. Likewise, when it comes to folkways, do we have to eat turkey on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day? Well, no. By and large, you're talking about sort of a customary form of behavior. That's the essence of folkways. But sometimes if we violate folkways, we get interesting informal sanctions, such as facial expressions. If you really have screwed up and violated a folkway, you might get the expression to the left, one of disgust. But on the other hand, a way by which you can be rewarded, sort of an informal, spontaneous, facial-based positive sanction, is you get a smile. Likewise, a smile may be accompanied with a hug. So remember that sanctions reinforce norms. Now, in the next lesson, we will concentrate primarily on types of norms, likewise some of the difficulties we encounter in confronting those norms. So, until next time.